New.
It's about that time.
About that time.
Yeah, and where
Alright.
we go, right? Yep,
Let's do it.
man.
How you been? What's good?
How I've been since yesterday, since we met,
I-
or the day
yeah.
before.
I don't know.
I
You
don't
pick.
know. I don't know.
Some crazy shit's happening in the past few days.
Yeah. I went through honestly 3 weeks ago when these videos of different militant groups mobilizing in Syria, they started popping up online. That was kind of like a weird throwback, because it seemed like they had kind of relegated these groups to certain pockets of control, but for the most part, the Syrian regime was in charge, and it didn't seem like they'd be overrun within a couple of weeks. And that's being generous. I think honestly,
It's within a week.
yeah, I mean, in 2-3 days, it seemed kind of a foregone conclusion that this was a done deal to me.
Yeah.
That's kind of during that time period, surprise, a little bit of worry, disappointment at times, skepticism, and at this moment more of a it's a moment to kind of step back and think, re-strategize, in my opinion, but we'll get into that, right? Because I think we might have a little slight different perspective on this.
Let's see.
I feel like over the past 3, 4, 5 years, there's been a repeated. It's been a recurring theme of being unprepared to meet the moment, right? And I think JCPOA onwards, maybe, where apparently, there's this axis of resistance, and slowly now we're finding out 8 years on, and again, hindsight is 2020, and I want to preface this by saying this is coming from a point of comfort and just opinion. This is not to kind of cast aspersions on anyone who has like a much bigger stake in the game, but I feel like it's the responsibility of us not to revert to sycophancy at this moment. Or any moment, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel like infantilization of the crowd is a big issue, of the flock is a big issue, but I feel like there was a lack of coherence, a lack of continuity, and ultimately, I guess, a lack of unity of command between the axis of resistance, so to speak, and also shows kind of. I think the last time when we met, we talked about a new hope, and for me, this one really felt like the empire or global capital, global finance striking back. Right? There's just too many fronts now where just overload with machinery and just throwing people into the meat grinder
Yeah.
with no. When it's in Ukraine, throwing your own civilians into the meat grinder at the behest of global finance to secure these pipelines, these natural gas deposits. And then when it comes to Israel and the past year, especially when it comes to this incursions into Lebanon, unprovoked, unjustifiable in any way, no matter what type of twisted logic you can try to justify the destruction of Gaza the past year. In Lebanon specifically, bombing residential buildings in mass without discretion, it showed that their own civilian populations of client states and the civilian populations of non-compliant states do not matter. Public perception does not matter. Ultimately, there's a recapture of the narrative, and I think right now it's too soon to get into what this means perception-wise of the U.S. globally, given relative to what we had been sensing as weakness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we can kind of put that to the side for now, right? I think that was speaking out of line and speaking too soon, and not realizing our own shortcomings. And by our own, I mean anyone who is against the proliferation of capital
Yeah.
as the hegemon around the globe.
Right.
But you care to you tell me how you've been feeling about this?
Yeah. No, I feel that it's you have the axis of resistance for a year, but in some way, shape, or form, even leading up to that for a long time, making moves against empire, and you see like in the entire world, that's where there is a nexus of active resistance against empire, and then out of nowhere, you start getting, leaders getting killed, mass destruction of civilians, and infrastructure. The war was going on. You see, it feels like the tide has turned, in favor of empire, right? The pager attack, all of that, it kind of led up to like a similar feeling of like, dang, something. It's a feeling of like, it's a feeling of sinister, of something sinister just being there, lurking there. It's very dark. But with everything that's happened, I'm seeing two lines of discourse, and they're two completely opposing lines of discourse. And that's something that I think there is some nuance there to be rectified, to be reconciled. And a lot of folks who are focusing on the collapse of imperial hegemony may be missing. And so that is, well, I guess, like, even to preface that, right, with Syria overall as a whole, I think is very complicated, and I see a lot of like reductive rhetoric about it all across the board. Given Syria's history, I think it's very difficult to say that a certain course of action is like, this is what's going to happen. And that's just because of the nature of the country, right? So it got its independence post World War I. It was carved up, right? Sykes-Picot. It got its independence then after World War II, and immediately coup after coup after coup after coup after coup. There's no political stability from the point it starts being a nation state onwards until later, right? And at that time, like, different people in that part of the world were all kind of, I guess, experimenting with different ways to respond to hegemony. Arab nationalism, pan-Arabism, Arab socialism of different sorts, Nasserist, Ba'athist, whatever the case may be. Gaddafi was doing whatever he was doing. Like, that was an era where people were figuring out how to cope with this now that the Ottoman Empire has collapsed and we are in this nation state phase. This is a new way of like organizing things, borders that we didn't recognize before. They were randomly drawn on a map. There's a lot of change going on, and Islamic oriented like political approach was another thing. Muslim Brotherhood, 79 revolution. People tried different things, failed. And in doing that, you see the fault lines in society as well, with the people and what direction they see for the future and what ideology they espouse, and how that's reflected then So in Syria, it's really complicated because ethnically it's very diverse. There's sectarian diversity, religious diversity, ideological diversity. A lot of Syria is secular. A lot of Syria supports the Muslim Brotherhood or is of that inclination. There are going to be different at that. You can't have a leader that can very easily make everyone happy, right? Especially when they're from one of the four sects religions that are there, which occupies I think 10-15% of the population, right? The Kurds have their own ambitions, the Arabs have their own ambitions. Bilad al-Sham as a whole was a historical region, but Aleppo and Damascus were not necessarily linked during the Ottoman time in the same way that they are right now in one polity. And so there's going to be growing pains when you impose this model, or you take the stencil of a map, the way the map looks right now, and just shove that onto there. The demographics are going to take time to adjust. Sometimes it won't adjust. There's so many different factors, and you see that reflected in all these coups and in all the different movements that are there on the ground. Arabism, Nasser, it united with Egypt. Syria and Egypt united. They came apart. And the entire time on the ground, you have different ideologies duking it out. So then you get to a point where the Muslim Brotherhood in the 80s, right, they really tried to do a takeover in Syria because of multiple different reasons, which I don't want to get into because that's just going to be a history rant. And since then, there's been this grievance among a pretty good sector of the population, which had to do with, again, just secularism. There's a lot to it, right? Hafiz al-Assad comes in, and for the first time, you don't have coup after coup after coup, right? There's still issues between, demographic issues and whatnot. The Kurds obviously have some national ambitions. But that goes on, and there is stability there in the sense that you have one government, or you don't have these coups. Bashar al-Assad comes in, neoliberalizes things. I think under Hafiz al-Assad, a lot of big industries were nationalized. And so the economic changes that'll come with that basically put things in a situation where I feel like Bashar al-Assad's stay was not tenable. And he was going to go down and out at some point or another. When you see the HTS, the group that was confined to Idlib and now is taken over Syria, when you see them like coming into towns and you see the amount of people that are like cheering them on and all of that, it gives you a sense of like, okay, there's a narrative that like, you know, these guys are just like head choppers and what, okay, hold on, but there's something to think about there. There's a lot of people who are just like, just casually, the institutions are here. And it kind of reminds me of when the Taliban took Afghanistan after the US left. Right?
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I struggled with that, and I really wanted to kind of, maybe dive deeper into that whenever we have Muslims like on, or like, have some of our other friends on who have a different perspective and who actually have been and are like right now have been elated.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though I did get a few text messages immediately after Israel started rolling into Golan that, hey, maybe you were right about some of this. Meaning that this kind of plays right into Israel's grander plan. Yeah. And right now, without the axis of resistance that had been forming, or with that axis being in a weaker state, Israel has unchecked power to go ahead and go into Syria. They've had a ceasefire agreement with Lebanon, with Hezbollah, which they've already violated. But there's a government in place which is not in favor of Hezbollah as well in Lebanon at the moment. Although, I mean, I'm not sure to what extent they are, not happy with.
It's not sovereign. The Lebanese government, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah. Yeah, I would question, I guess, where this kind of critique of Bashar al-Assad. I understand the global chess game. I don't understand the sycophancy and everyone being so, you know, invested in real like politique, where they are trying to make sure, either in the midst of conversation, me or you don't get demoralized, or me or you do not get disenchanted with the movement just in the midst of a conversation because there's a critique of ultimately just a pawn in the grand scheme of things. Which, I mean, Bashar al-Assad, I've always pointed to this. Back in 2005, 2006, I think, somewhere around that time, him and his wife were sleeping inside of Buckingham Palace. So this was someone who was not too far removed from the centers of power of global finance.
He basically neoliberalized the economy when he got in, right? So at that point, that's what you're going towards.
I would question what his power base was entirely. I mean, was it just the financiers still? Who was still backing him? Or
So,
even at
yeah,
the beginning of the
question.
conflict,
Yeah.
right? Who was still backing him?
A lot of the minorities were, because he himself was a minority, right? Being a secularist and being a minority, the Christians, the Alawites, the Shias, the Druze, had a sense of security from the possibility of there being, like, I guess, sectarian violence against them. Because it's like, okay, the guy on top, strongman, we're going to be good, right? Because that's his demographic too. He's an Alawi. And so, from that point of view, and then folks of secular orientation, right? So, Syrian society, you'll find both people who are a lot more religious, traditional, and then people who are of a much more secular orientation. And I think there are some people who supported Bashar al-Assad because they wouldn't want the alternative, not necessarily because they were like, yeah, I love this guy's policies. So he had that going for him.
But and I had this question repeatedly, if, his power had become centered around his loyalty to the Iranian bloc, and maybe not today, maybe let's say 10 years ago, 2015, 16, when I think the Syrian Civil War was at its peak, they could have, replaced him with, and just, like Iran, if they were the ones pushing the needle on this, which I think in that region they were at that time, and going into COVID, I mean, you can.
What do you mean by pushing the needle?
As in, Bashar al-Assad internationally, his power had now become completely centered around his support from Iran and Russia, right? Broadly speaking.
Yeah.
Iran obviously needed that region, that area, for supply lines to Lebanon and ultimately to Palestine as well. Why did it not occur to them, hey, let's replace this guy, let's install a junta for all intents and purposes? That his administration was using the state's power onto his people. I think that much is clear now, right? That isn't like that
for sure.
And I think that was probably clear a little, or in the early stages of his.
Enough civilians had their friends or family members killed that he has this many people cheering for his opposition coming in. You feel like, to your point.
Yeah, and I mean, you can blame it on the extremism on the opposition. The opposition is mobilizing based around whether it's not on. The opposition is mobilizing not based around their you have to take
religiosity.
Religiosity. Yeah, I have to say that word really slow every time. Religiosity.
Yep.
They're not. Yeah, thank you. They're not coming together on that. They're coming together on their hatred of this man, right? And the machinery, I guess, and the training and the commandeering of these forces, that is what's being, I guess, coming from other areas, Chechnya. I think Al Qaeda's entire business model has been, when they've been trying to export this Islamic radicalization worldwide, has been, hey, we're gonna teach you how to raise money, how to conduct raids, how to go about, doing things operationally in an efficient manner. Instead of us coming in cohorts and joining you in some kind of mongrel.
Iraq and Syria are right next to each other, so that did happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about Al Qaeda itself.
Chapter
in and even that chapter, that's the business model that they use, which is, hey, there's a group ripe for agitation against the government. What they need is a mobilizing ideology and machinery, meaning money, arms, and the only groups that can provide that right now to them, I mean, the past 20 years to them, past 30, 40 years, maybe post Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the groups that are that have access to the arms and the kind of funds necessary are, I mean, these Salafi groups, Salafi affiliates, these offshoots, who at the end of the day, in a roundabout way, if not just directly, are being funded by the State Department, the CIA,
Saudi Arabia,
or their client states and their intelligence services, and they're playing this 4D chess, which seems like it's a bumbling, hey, the FBI was supporting one group and the CIA was supporting another group in Syria who were fighting each other. It seems like idiocy. It seems like, who are these who are these idiots running everything? Turns out, I mean, I'm not justifying it, or I'm not saying it was 5D chess. What I'm saying is they do have an operational strategy. They do have a grand strategy. And it seemed like we were ready to attach ourselves, and again, by ourselves, I'm using this broadly, as, let's say, us as, if not supporters, fans of the resistance, right? A resistance against global capital, a resistance against imperialism and Zionism. And as supporters of it, you're seeing our kind of general, I think, not knowing what we are fighting, because I felt like we got caught
off
guard and overconfident. Off guard and overconfident, and that ranges.
This is something that was shocking.
And and the issue is it shouldn't have been, right?
Yeah, it happened. It all happened very abruptly, but the overconfidence thing that you're saying, assuming that Bashar al-Assad is just he's just going to be in Syria, he's going to be the leader for the rest of his life. One day, he's going to march into Israel through the Golan Heights, and that's where another issue is with him.
And that's the miscalculation, and that's what I mean. Talking about putting your eggs in these kinds of baskets, tying yourself to someone like Bashar al-Assad, who, thinking he's going to roll into Golan, bro, he is there to secure his power. And that is a realistic stake in the game.
So that's what I wanted to talk about. That the conception of the axis of resistance for some people is very, it's light. I'm not saying that it lacks nuance, right? Bashar al-Assad was not a puppet of Iran. Iran was, ended up becoming a liability, right? He ended up becoming somebody that they had to prop up, but without him putting in his end of the bargain, right? He was asked by the resistance axis to join Hezbollah and Hamas, and the resistance groups in Gaza as the third front. A long time ago, apparently, months ago. And he said no. Instead, he was trying to cozy up to the Gulf states. Right? So there is this thing where he was with the Axis of Resistance when that was the move. But did he have that same commitment? And another thing that I realized is there's an ideological gap there. Ansarullah, Hezbollah, Iran, Hamas, they are what would be known as Islamist, or they have an ideology based on Islam. Bashar al-Assad, very different, secular. And I don't think that that is just like a cosmetic thing to glance over. I think that there is a disconnect there. When I think about Hafiz al-Assad supporting Iran in the 80s, right? Because I would imagine that's when the two got close, right? Was it for any principled reason, or was it because his Ba'ath Party was against Saddam's Ba'ath Party? They had the Ba'ath Party split, right? So then Syria and Iraq were beefing, Hafiz al-Assad and Saddam were beefing. So every other Arab country supported Saddam, but Syria supported Iran. Okay, but why? Right? Because they're not gonna support their enemy. And that's great, but then also remember the Lebanese Civil War, where Hezbollah and Syria were fighting against each other. Axis of resistance. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what was it? I'm not sure. You can educate me. What was Iran's predisposition during that? What was Iran's disposition during the tensions between Hezbollah and
Syria?
Syria?
They were materially supporting Hezbollah, directly supporting and training Hezbollah. Hezbollah themselves, though, split from the Amal movement, which was armed at that time, and they in Syria were fighting on the same side. Hezbollah and the PLO were on the same side. And today you have Hezbollah still, right? You see there's a difference in principle here. Who's still with the Palestinians and who is doing things for pragmatic national interest.
And I mean, honestly, this is where, and we're gonna circle back to Hezbollah for sure. And I mean, honestly, they find themselves in a much more precarious situation where supply lines are cut, domestically popularity is at an all-time low, both politically and within the populace. And
but for Hezbollah, domestic popularity is not on a low; it's on a high. Yeah.
How do you think what do you think right now?
The attacks against Lebanon united a lot of the Lebanese people. I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of Lebanese who were not an ally or who were not fond of Hezbollah during the Syrian Civil War came around to say, okay, hey, like these guys are the bulwark between Israel and us. So there was a good moment of I wouldn't say national unity, because you have among the Christians, you have some like Christian Zionists or whatnot. You have some people who are still mad about Syria and they had that. But Hezbollah's popularity went up.
During this past year, you're saying that it's gone up.
Yeah.
And so what do you feel like their future prospects are right now, given that there's their benefactors overseas,
supply lines cut,
and I guess any of their allies in their close proximity, Hamas, Syria, those seemed for right now, those don't seem like avenues of support. I feel like, and I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts about this? Before cause I wanted to do
the isolation of Hezbollah. Man, I think.
And the devastation of his leadership.
And so first off, there's that, right? Is this ceasefire thing should have given them the time to kind of reorganize, reorient, kind of recoup whatever, and get all the new leadership infrastructure into place. They did have a model where every leader has a second leader, and that leader has a deputy, and is just waiting to go, plug and play. And so you saw operational continuity the day before, between the day before Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah died and the day after. That wasn't a problem. But I think as a political symbol, he really, and the kind of political direction and the overall big picture direction of it, that was definitely a hit to morale for a lot of people as well. Here's the thing. Both Ansarullah and Hezbollah have made statements asking the new Syrian administration of HTS essentially to join the axis of resistance. Now, the Ansarullah's thing was interesting. Their spokesperson posted a tweet. I wanted to talk about this. Their spokesperson posted a tweet saying something along the lines of, Jolani should do what I told Assad to do a year ago. Assad didn't listen and he paid the price. A year ago, Ansarullah, very soon after October 7th, they asked Bashar al-Assad as a fellow member of the resistance axis. And I can only imagine Ansarullah was probably not alone in making this request. That, hey, Gaza, the resistance in Gaza just did this operation. Gaza's getting genocided. Hezbollah got active. You're the third front. Let's go. Ansarullah is getting active too. And Assad saying no is what he was referring to. And he quoted an ayah of the Quran where he's like, something, I don't remember what it was, but if you don't go forth, you will be replaced by something better than you, or something like that. And that's very prescient that he said that in October 2023. And over a year later, Assad's refusal to play a proper role in the Axis didn't give his people anything to unite under him the way that Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah did for those people in Lebanon. So I think that HTS now has the ball is in their court. One of the people say and you said, so HTS is very complicated. I would personally not say that they are directly a American proxy or a Turkish proxy. And the reason for that is Turkey has, if you remember when HTS kind of came out of Idlib, there was also the SNA, the Syrian National Army. That's the militia group that Turkey made out of the ashes of the FSA. And that is a direct Turkish proxy. HTS, at one point, HTS consists of multiple different groups. Some groups have, within the rebel opposition, there were factions as well that fought one another. So some of them have been funded by Saudi, some of them have been funded by Qatar, some by the CIA, like you're talking about. That one actually, I think, is. So, but after a while, there seemed to have been a shift in that axis where Jolani wanted to cut from Al-Qaeda over Al-Qaeda's central leadership not being on the ground and not being able to connect with these groups' national ambitions for Syria. And that's where the decoupling happened. So when people were like, oh, these guys are ISIS, they're Al-Qaeda. Well, there's an official decoupling there because they are saying, no, we're narrowing our goals down to national ambitions. That reminds me of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, right? When you see the Taliban right now, they were created. When they were created, there was US funding behind the Mujahideen and that whole thing. But that didn't really work out for the US. Because over time, they now, today, realize that, hey, what we need to do is nation building. Afghanistan or Taliban are not going around chopping people's heads off. As far as I know, it's fairly safe. There's tourism going on there. Literally, go on YouTube and
there's like TikTokers going.
And it's like chill. And one of my friends, he got married over there too. He was like, he's a Shia guy, right? So those were the people who were, worried the most when the Taliban was taking over. He was like, yeah, it's cool. They're Shia Talibs. So the Taliban realized that we're trying to do statecraft here. We need to build a nation, and we need to go from rebel group to having government institutions. HTS already has a Ministry of Education, the Ministry of whatever. They were running a government in Idlib. So I'm personally skeptical of the notion that they are directly puppeted by the West.
So off of just headlines, this Muhammad al-Jolani guy.
Yeah.
This dude, some of it, it's just...
There's the question of how much of it is showmanship.
Yeah, how much of it is just propaganda? Because, when you are against someone, when you're forced... now the U.S. media is for him, so it's a different narrative. He's on CNN wearing Zelensky's clothes. They give him the same clothes.
That's crazy.
It's insane. It's like you got the same designer, right? That dude's still walking around in camo, bro. We got a new guy who looks like him now. Also, you see him as in there's the same facial hair now, the same haircut as Zelensky, same shirts.
It's crazy.
But
there you go, learning statecraft.
This guy apparently, before the U.S. media was claiming that he had personally beheaded people, he had personally cannibalized people, and knowing some of the stories that came out of Syria, I wouldn't put it past anyone involved in any group involved in the Syrian conflict to have engaged in that. That was, and also the fact that apparently he spent time in an American prison.
Yeah,
now,
he had gone to, if I remember correctly, he had gone to Iraq to fight the Americans. Jolani, he's from the Golan Heights, interestingly. But when the U.S. invaded Iraq, he went to, and I believe he joined Al-Qaeda or some Al-Qaeda adjacent group, and eventually found his way into Al-Qaeda. Yeah, he was imprisoned by the United States.
Yeah, that's kind of sus.
It's sus that he got out.
Yeah. That again, none of these...
on what terms did you get out?
Yeah, what was your rehabilitation like inside of that?
Yeah.
Who is funding you with arms now? Also, this does not seem much like a rebellion. Seems like, this is... I wouldn't say that, this isn't 50,000 people rolling down the street. This horde of people that's coming around, it's not, 40,000 people deep. As opposed to the Syrian army, which I've seen numbers that, they had up to 300,000 troops.
Mm.
And within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, without any... Relative to the rest of this civil war, the past 15 years, 14 years, without any any bloodshed.
That was crazy.
Yeah, it seems like a very much a concerted effort, and as far as the people who are the big stakeholders, Russia, Iran, we'll start with Turkey first.
Mm.
It seemed like Turkey is the big winner in this, right? I think in the battle of the strongmen, Erdogan realized what Assad did not, hey, you are too far gone. Like you said, your position here now,
it's not sustainable.
This is against the imperial hubris to have you here. Even in peacetime now, even if everything happens, we can replace you with your own clone with a different name, but not you. I think I'm repeating myself a little bit. Iran or whoever was pulling the strings on Assad, Russia, they should have found an exit avenue here. Maybe 10 years ago, yes, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe during COVID time, played it a little bit, been a bit more proactive with this, which is like, hey, we're reliant completely on Assad's tenure right now is completely reliant on the military's loyalty, not being bought off, and also not getting demoralized or honestly.
So they shouldn't have. They should have had another coup, but this one's sponsored by Iran, not the United States.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like that. I mean, this is something we'll get into. I completely 100% think. I mean, like, I never, even 10 years ago, I never thought tying yourself ideologically or glorifying Bashar al-Assad was a good idea on anyone's part. And I met a lot of people, both, people who were like, close to people who are scholars, people who have been in Iran, people who have lived here, are academics who they had a much more like sycophantic tie to Bashar al-Assad during this past 10 years.
It's dogmatism, I feel like.
Yeah, and it was almost like totally ignoring the fact that this guy is going to go to the highest bidder. Right now, no one else is bidding for him except for your bum. I mean, your bum ass. Honestly, like we could have had you think
he tried with the UAE?
If there was a free agency draft of strongmen, Bashar al-Assad is not going in the first couple of rounds for sure. Right? As in, like, if we had to draft a strongman to put as a puppet for a region, I mean, just right now in contemporary times, there's like probably MBS is right there.
Bro,
there's Erdogan.
The guy you want to talk about a strongman, the guy who's running Chechnya right now, who has all these UFC fighters.
Oh,
that guy's a strongman, bro. That guy's something else. But yeah,
he looks funny though.
Yeah, he does.
He looks funny.
But bro, I think the doing a coup even when there is this like instability with these groups who were against Bashar al-Assad, I think would have seemed risky just because it would give an opening for these groups to get active.
I mean, it didn't have to be a coup. It could have been like an offer, like, hey, there's a nice villa somewhere. You have your assets.
A soft coup, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and we go from here. He was never going to hold on to power and did not have a contingency, or the contingency being, well, hey, there's so many people that died.
Yeah.
As in, this was not the...
A lot of people died.
Yeah, if this was the end outcome, and you're like, well, 15 years of attrition later. And same thing applied to him, honestly, and I think this makes it more sinister, where you held on to power all this time for the sake of holding on to power. Which, I know that is a cliche and whatnot. Yeah. But also not having the intelligence to think, I can't if that is the integral role Bashar al-Assad was playing, and then having that, disposition that I will outlast the imperialists while also not playing the long game and not making a move. Mm-hmm. Those two things just...
that doesn't work.
It seems incoherent. The thought process does not seem like it has any coherence to it, and it's probably not overnight. This has probably been strategized over and over again. If he had not gone into Golan, let's say in 2015-16, again at the height of the Civil War, it would have maybe been. It would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Now when they had kind of tamed, relatively tamed the domestic agitation that had been ongoing, they should have made that move. Otherwise, he was gonna get toppled by the people he was not willing to go against. That being said, I think Turkey, they kind of unleashed. On their own accord, they've been ready for this, and they've been waiting for the right time, and they played it right because again, they specifically, given their inflation rates, given where they were, where their economy's been at, and what they've been doing to kind of keep Erdogan in power, which is everything in the textbook. The first was the coup, the quote unquote the coup, which got wrapped up in like 2 hours and just had a couple of guys arrested. Whether it's been kind of getting people riled up behind this Kurdish, their issues with the Kurds. I think they had a bombing there in 2019 in I'm forgetting which city actually right now at the top of my head, but they had a bombing in 2019 that they associated with the what is the Turkish group? I forget I always forget their acronyms. PLFP.
The Kurdish group.
Yeah.
The PKK.
PKK.
Kurdistan Workers Party. Yeah.
Yeah, they had I think they had taken responsibility, or the Turkish government had put responsibility on the PKK for
that helps them make their case for why they can be involved in Syria because the Kurds there.
Yeah, simultaneously justifying the fact that they have, obscene amounts of inflation, which is beyond anyone that is in power their control.
Yeah.
So they've thrown the whole textbook at it, and then Islamization of Turkey during this time period, and again, just a way to circumvent the tight money supply, and the fact that right now, there's high amounts of debt being accrued at all rungs of society, and that is directly because there's just not enough cash. There's just not enough liquidity in the market, in the Turkish market, and it was only a matter of time. Like at one point, it was either Erdogan stays in power, or he sells out, right? And he sells out, but doesn't. Either he stays in power and sells out, or he decides, hey, I'm going down with the ship, because there was no way to. Without this move, he would have a hard time being able to have his populace coalesce around different types of emergencies and domestic problems and geopolitical maneuvering, when the bread, the butter, the eggs, these things are getting expensive. I mean, we kind of saw that here a little bit to a much lower degree, but I think Erdogan right now, I mean, you can tell me what you think. I think out of this whole affair, he is the guy who's coming out on top. He has kind of imposed himself in the region on top of Russia, on top of Syria. I think he's been able to kind of get what he wanted and circumvent any advances Saudi has made.
Yeah, I completely see that. He's been vying for top dog in that part of the world, and I think the Islamic inclination helps him, because Saudi Arabia is going the opposite direction, so a lot of people look to Turkey. At the same time, he also harkens back to like this memory of the Ottoman Empire. You can think of what he's doing right now as like a neo-Ottoman project. He talks a lot, makes all these Ottoman Empire references. He'll do speeches at these statues of different Ottoman sultans. Turkey's pumping out Ertugrul and all of this, and it shows. They're catching on, right? And all of it is about like this vision of like how things used to be when Turkey ran this shit. I think the disenfranchisement with Saudi Arabia that people were getting and whatnot, plus positive coverage by Al Jazeera.
Is there there's brotherhood involvement, given that
the brotherhood is allied with
Qatar, Egypt. Exactly. I think Egypt. Qatar, I mean, has kind of
Egypt had the brotherhood. I mean, the U.S. couped them.
Yeah. I mean, any remnants of that have been cut at the knee in Egypt. But I think the brotherhood has really found a new life in Qatar and in Turkey. A new life, meaning, I mean, being back at the level of statecraft at the time when Morsi was in prison. You thought the brotherhood would be in his death days, honestly.